Hi Zoe, this is John Renee, and this is video that Jen requested that I make for you. So I'm going to go through, basically I was given three things to talk about. The first one is the thought process during my triathlons, and then explain my training process, and then finally why I choose to compete in triathlons. Uh, so my thought process during triathlons, let's start before the race. The first thing, probably the most important, is to make sure that I have everything when I go down and put things in the bike in the rack, things like that. Um, One thing I wanted also like to do is ensure that I have my number memorized, that I know what it is. Um, that can be important sometimes, like when you're out there, people will yell at you with your number and things like that. So you want to know who that they're talking about you. Um, Another thing is with the bike, I want to make sure it's on the rack somewhere where I can find it easily. And then another thing that's important is check out the route between the end of the swim and the start of or where your bike is at. Then once you have all that, try to relax a little bit before the start. Now in the swim, what I usually do is I try to get outside, either outside the main pack, and so with the idea of kind of diving in and swimming on the outside toward the front. And at the start of the swim, I don't go out super hard. I usually try to get faster as I go. Um, and also at the start, most of the time, I'll follow people for a while with the idea. And then once I can sight the buoys, I'm comfortable with sighting buoys, know where they are, then I'll just go and I'll start going for the buoys as opposed to just following people. One thing important is I always watch out for somebody ahead of you. A lot of times you're catching up slower swimmers and things like that. So you got to make sure you kind of keep an eye open so you don't crash into someone. And then at the finish, like 100 yards or so before the finish, I really start to think of, okay, now what do I need to do um, once I hit the end of the swim and I start doing the transition. On the bike, uh, it's important, I guess in the first transition, one thing that's important is if it's a fairly long transition or to the bike, make sure you actually run. Don't just walk it. That's a way you can lose a lot of time. And so I try to push myself walking it or running it. And then one thing, this is something to get in the habit of, tried to get in the habit of, is when you get there, get your shoes and everything on, put on your helmet, and don't take your bike out of the rack until your helmet is on and fastened. This is not important for a lot of the small triathlons, but it's really important when you get to the big ones, when you get to the major ones. And then on the bike, um, you know, just set off, and I tend to go fairly hard, and I try to basically catch and pass people as I go. Important thing is try not to draft someone. Try not to you don't want to get a penalty for drafting someone as you pass them. And then when you get toward the end of the bike, tend to relax a little bit. Don't do an all-out sprint to the finish, and then make sure you don't go past the place where you're supposed to hop off. Make sure you're off the bike before you get there. And again, don't unfasten your helmet until the bike is racked. And then for the run, like to get up to speed fairly quickly, and then just basically try to hang on to that speed to the end. And then with the one thing is, as you get close to the end, it's good to sprint. It's nice to have a sprint there. It's nice to catch that one or two more people as you're finishing, even if they're not in your age group and stuff. So, and then basically then you're done. And now, so for like the training process, I'm probably a little strange on what I do is I almost never do more than one activity a day. I tend to concentrate on one thing. Um, for the bike and the run, I like to go roughly the distance that I'm going to be racing at. So in other words, I tend to do like 20-mile bike rides, which is for Olympic. That's a little shorter, but it's close. And the same thing with run. I tend to do 5 miles on most days when I do it. Every so often, throw in a longer one on either of those. For swimming, though, I tend to do 2 or 3 times what the distance of the swim is, because swims tend to be not the longest, and I don't think you get that endurance if you're short. If you are just doing the distance, if you're only doing like 800 or something like 800 or 800 yards. The important thing too is get plenty of rest. Basically, try to eat well. Don't eat junk food. And then one thing I really like in training is to race the individual sports. So do open water races, do long pool races, do cycling time trials. I think they're really good. A lot of people don't do those. And then do some 5-10K running races. And finally, why I compete is, first of all, I like to compete. I like to challenge myself against other people and challenge myself against myself. And I found that I do better relative to other people doing triathlons than I do in the individual sports. Another thing I like about why I do it is I completely concentrate on the event when I'm doing it. So it's almost like meditation. I completely lock out all my other cares and woes for a few minutes while I'm doing it. And then finally, it feels good when it's over. And the other benefit of it is it's a good way to meet some really interesting people, and people that have similar, have similar interests to you. And that's really the fun thing about it. So I hope this is useful, and I hope everything goes well with your project. And have a good evening. Bye.